Kelly, if you could mute your computer.
I'm not paying attention either, apparently. Sorry, I haven't joined with audio. That's why it's not.
Oh.
I just don't join. I don't know.
Yeah.
Fancy pants. Okay, you ready to go?
Yep.
All
Are
right.
we live now, David?
We go like this.
Yep, we are live.
Hey, good evening, everybody, to the special meeting. We'll start with a salute to the flag.
What's over there?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, no closed session action. Any emergency additions or modifications to the agenda? Not hearing any, then can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Moved by Jane, seconded by Shelley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Yes, but would you like to mention where the other board
I'm
members?
not sure where they are.
So tonight, we have two board members who are not with us. Dr. Chandler has a Ventura Unified School Board meeting tonight because it's the end of the month and we're all trying to process our budgets. And Member Ruff is out of the state.
Thank you. Okay, so next item is public comments. I don't have any speaker cards. Do we have any public
I have
comments?
not received it.
Okay, then we'll go on to item 3.1, public hearing for the proposed budget. Can I have a motion to open the hearing?
I'll move to open.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, no opposed. Right over to you.
So I'm not going to go over all of the budget nuances today. We will have with us tomorrow Mike Clear and Betty Martinez, who are our consultants, but I will provide tonight an update on the state budget, which was just approved Sunday at midnight. And so there are a few things that have happened, which means that everything that you have in your board packet relative to the budget is outdated because we have to update all of that. And so our plan is to bring to you, the board, a 45-day revise, as I think most districts will be doing given the late approval date of the state budget. But the state budget includes some good news for us overall. So the LCFF, the local control funding formula, will have a 6.56 cost of living adjustment, as well as an additional 6.28 base grant increase.
Ongoing.
So, yes. And so that is good news for us. The other piece of good news is that there are two policies that alter how the ADA, so the average daily attendance for apportionment, is calculated. And this has been a significant issue for all districts because during COVID, we had students who were out for many, many days in a row because they had to quarantine. And so every district has had pretty significant decrease in ADA beginning in the 2019-20 school year and going all the way through this school year. Actually, particularly this school year, we've had a lot of quarantining at every site multiple times for students. And if you remember, at some point it was 10 days and then it was 5 days. And so we are grateful that the state has come to an agreement to allow us some relief on ADA. And so there's two things that we can do. We can use a 3-year average, or we can use the 1920 attendance rates. The 1920 attendance rates, we stopped taking ADA in March, if you remember, because that's when everyone shut down, but we still had some significant absences from January to March because people were hearing about COVID, but it's nothing like what we've had this year with all of the quarantining. But in order to utilize either of those provisions, LEAs have to have offered independent study in the 21-22 school year, which we did. And tomorrow you'll see an update to our independent study board policies to reflect what we've done this year. The budget also creates 2 different block grants. More details on this will be forthcoming. Right now, we just have some high level information. Part of what has been holding up the state budget is this idea of whether they wanted to have ongoing funds that were allocated on an unduplicated pupil basis or on a total enrollment ADA count. And so you can see they kind of split the difference here. So there's one block grant that's unduplicated and one block grant that's for all students. And so the larger of the 2 is based on unduplicated student count. And just as a reminder, this is something that has been a struggle for us here in Ohio Unified, because when we went to universal meals, families didn't have as much of an incentive to fill out free and reduced lunch forms. And so we spent so many hours calling families, but it's still sometimes hard to convince families to fill out an application for free and reduced lunch when they get free lunch, regardless of whether they fill out the form or not. And so we just applied for a new way of collecting free and reduced student information. So essentially this unduplicated student count. So rather than collecting forms, we applied today. Vanessa is our brand new nutrition services director, and the form was due today, and she just submitted it a couple of hours ago, which would allow us to do something that is called provision 2, which means that we collect a baseline year of data for all of our forms, and then we don't have to collect forms again for 3 years. And then we can even ask for an extension beyond that. And so this is going to be our baseline year if we get approved for provision 2. And so we will have a massive campaign to get these forms out. We're probably not going to call them free and reduced lunch forms, but they'll be more like family income forms. And then we'll be working on a very robust plan for collecting that data this year that's as accurate as we can get it. So, but our funds for this first learning recovery block grant will be based, I believe, on last year's unduplicated student count. And we have been in this district as high as 52%. And I believe last year we were in the low 40s. So, but we do have the other arts, music, and instructional materials block grant, which is actually very broad, although the title implies some suggested uses. It's actually fairly broad. But that will be distributed on a per pupil basis. So we'll get our portion of 3.56 billion for all students, and then based probably on 42%-ish of the 7.9 billion for learning recovery.
So it sounds like it's going to be beneficial to us to use the 3-year average on attendance. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I think we can use the higher of the 2. So that will be part of the work that we'll need to do before we can bring you a revised budget, because obviously that ADA is a huge impact. It's essentially the multiplier for all of our fiscal decisions. And so we'll need to do some work to figure out which one will be best for us and which one will apply to us. So the other good news is the budget had some increases for home to school transportation funding. This has been an ongoing issue with the state legislature this entire year, with some changes that have happened just recently to get this budget approved. But will now be able to recoup up to 60% of our prior year costs. And so it's essentially like a reimbursement model as I see it now, but there's a lot more details to come. But we will have to develop a plan, which, as you know, we have lots and lots of plans that we work on a regular basis. I'm looking at Marilyn, but we will have to develop a plan that will detail how we'll prioritize transportation for TK through 6 and low income students. And so that'll be a plan that you'll see coming to you in the future so that we can qualify for this funding. There's also some additional money for electric buses that's part of this. We have not yet qualified for electric bus grants because you generally have to trade in an older model gas bus, and all of our gas buses are new, and so they haven't met that criteria. But we're hoping that there will be some we'll have to obviously increase our overall transportation to meet all of the TK through 6th and low income pupils, and that might require additional buses. We'll see. So there is some funding for that, but we'll have to work through all of the details that come later in the trailer bill language. Also, a little bit of an increase in the state special education funding, which would bring the base rate for state funding up to $820 per student. As you saw in your budget assumption documents, the vast majority of our special education costs are not funded through either federal or state funds, but through our general fund. So this helps to offset some of our special education costs.
Very little.
Yeah, not much, but some. I think there's many discussions always at the federal level, but some pressure this year to increase the federal level of funding as well for special education. There's some additional changes in the budget for transitional kindergarten. I think that will be less impactful for us. We're able to absorb most of our TK programs into what we're already doing, but some funding that will help with lowering staffing ratios and some facilities. We'll be using a lot of our additional facilities, but adding TK. We just talked today, we just walked at Miramani, TK tables, TK play structures, and TK chairs. And additional Prop 51 facilities grants. So that's the state funding for facilities. This may or may not impact us. The way that it works is they have a lot of previously approved facilities projects that have not been funded, but they've been approved. So I think Oxnard Union they have, some $4.5 million or something in approved projects that's been approved for 3 to 4 years, but there's been no state funding. So first they fund those projects, then they fund new projects. I don't believe we have any projects that are on the list, but we can get on the list for if there's any money to fund new projects. So to be determined on how much of an impact that might have on us. The Expanding Learning Opportunity Program, ELOP, which we do. If you have more than 70% of unduplicated students, you have to do this. If you have fewer than 70%, you can. We do this. We have a plan. Unclear about what the impact will be until we get more details on this. And then nutrition services, some additional funding for nutrition services. As I was just saying earlier, and it's a little bit complicated. I'm still wrapping my head around this. So basically the state of California has universal meals, but what they want us to do first is to charge as many free and reduced lunch meals as we can to federal funds, and then the state will supplement what's left. And so we're unclear exactly how this will roll out and what it'll look for us, but it does mean that there's some additional funding for nutrition services that will help us out.
Which is great, because in the past, we've had to supplement from general fund into nutrition services.
Yes, this is the first year in at least 3 years that we have, I think probably more than that we have not had to provide general fund reimbursement to the nutrition services account. And so partially,
We've been on board.
yeah, so
It adds up to 90,000.
yeah. So this year we didn't have to do that, partially because the federal reimbursement rates were higher because they are also doing universal meals. Those waivers were set to expire June 30th. They just extended them. Again, I think midnight on Sunday. It seems like a lot of people were working over the weekend late into the night. And so we're still figuring out exactly what that looks like, but that's great news for us. And again, if we can have our provision to plan for how we collect those forms, I think that will also be very helpful for us in terms of our reimbursement rates. That's an overview of where we are on the budget and why basically every component that you see in the budget to be adopted tomorrow, which we have to adopt by June 30th, will be changing, and we'll be bringing back to you probably at the August 13th board meeting.
So to what extent do you want to actually talk about this, if at all? I mean, is there anything that's going to day that we could talk about tonight, or?
If you have specific questions around the budget assumption document, we tried to spend a lot of time, and I commend the business office for putting together a lot of historical data that you haven't
Yes, that was really helpful.
always seen before. Mike Clear, who's been working with us, helped lead the charge, but every single person in the business office, as well as HR department, contributed data to making that happen. So you can see our long-term enrollment, the long-term enrollment in the county, how much our post-employment benefits cost the district, how much our health and welfare, PERS and STRS rates. So you can just see kind of historically why we are where we are in terms of our overall financial situation based on increased utility costs, increased PERS and STRS. I mean, the PERS and STRS rates are very significant. I think that's worth noting, that for every dollar we pay an employee, for a PERS employee, we pay an additional 30+ cents for that employee just in all of the other ancillary statutory benefits outside of increased health and welfare. So it ends up being somewhere around 40 to 50 cents for an additional employee for every dollar that we pay in salary if they have health and welfare benefits.
And I know in terms of expense ratios and stuff, like in our systems, you would love to see like 86% of your revenue going, no more than 86 or so percent of your revenue going to personnel and other types of expenses. Do we know where we are right now?
We're right around there. And we provide that. We have a chart that has a little dollar bill that's broken up that we provide in the first interim and the second interim. And I think we're right around that 84%. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but we're in that number.
That's good.
And the PERS and STRS, we had that additional sort of, the state took, they've ended that. They're not adding or taking away some of that expense.
Yeah, there was a PERS and STRS offset for the last couple of years, and there was a very big push to offset the PERS and STRS employer contributions outside of the Prop 98 guarantee, which did not make it through the budget. But I think in lieu of that, that's where you see the two base grants and the additional LCFF, not COLA, but the additional monies in the LCFF base grant.
Oh, I just realized I forgot to send this in, but on page, it's 11 under the health benefits, under classified employees. I believe that last line, 4 to 5 hours, should it say employee pays 100% and the district pays 100%? I thought we didn't pay unless they were removed 6 hours for health insurance.
I'll have to look at our contract. I think we pulled that language directly from our contract, but I'll have to confirm. I can have an answer for you by tomorrow.
It just seems weird that we would pay more for someone in the 4 to 6 range than we would for someone 6 to.
Yeah, I'll double check that against the contract language.
It may be that those in the 4 to 6 range don't receive health benefits. It's life insurance and vision, I think, is all that they receive. And I think the district pays 100% just of that.
Yeah,
That doesn't cost very much.
Yeah. That's my memory. I could be wrong, but
it is true. I just want to double check.
yeah, don't take my word for it.
Also, the meeting is August 10th, not 13th.
And I noticed in the utilities on page 14, the slight decrease in water. We had seen water going up and up and up, and was impressed to see that our field restoration work has benefited us in the general fund the way we were hoping it would. That was gratifying.
Yes.
I have to say, I think this presentation is really well done. It's very easy to read. It's all obsolete, but other than that, it's really well done.
But the background information won't change.
Right.
And so I think that's the important part, is this a holistic picture of all the things that go into this. This is the first year that we have looked at our overall percentages of special education services for students, and seen that that is higher than the rest of the county. significantly, and the overall impact that has to our general fund contributions. And so I'm thinking about how we operate special education and what that looks like, and how we can provide the services, and also maintain our fiscal health will be an ongoing work that we're doing. So for example, this year we've staffed in special education to caseload, which is 28. And so we spent, I don't know how many hours looking at every aide, every classroom, looking at all of the students that we have that have services, who may be coming in with services, and really adjusting our staffing according to those needs. So there's ongoing systematic work that we're doing to align our resources and our needs.
And are we affected at all? That doesn't, the charter schools, that doesn't affect that number is, their numbers are separate. Because I know they have a high special education percentage also, don't they?
I think it's actually relatively low, but there are definitely some special education needs at the charter school that we're working through.
So I'm looking at the charts on, I don't see the page number, but basically it's the enrollment chart. I almost swallowed my tongue when I got to that page.
You mean the graph?
Yeah. And you know, I know forced perspective, right? You get your axes, so you show difference, but still it's a pretty precipitous drop. And it's projected to get, you know, smaller. And I'm just, this may not be the time in the agenda for this, but I'm just wondering, is there some point in time where we can start to have an intentional conversation about what we're going to do?
Yeah, so our plan is to start having conversations in the fall around declining enrollment that have community participation and staff participation, and looking at what that means. Both when you have declining enrollment, you essentially have a couple of options. You can decrease expenses and increase revenue. And so we have been working on both of those. So increase revenue by adding Summit School, by adding San Antonio as a TK. Our enrollment has gone from around 92 to around 150 for next year. So we've increased the numbers there. Not all of those are from within the district. A lot of those are from outside of the
supply
district.
line.
Right. And so, you know, there's really two different ways to look at the problem. And so those are things that conversations that we'll have in the fall, once we have some really solid numbers about where we are and what we actually need to cut, and what our options are moving forward.
And then along those lines, you're talking programmatic stuff, which I think is really, really important. But I'm starting to question in my mind, is there a facilities conversation that we should be starting to have as well?
Yes.
I mean, I know when we talked about it before, there wasn't like big pot loads of money, but I mean.
I think in the past we have said to ourselves, oh, that's only a couple of $100,000. It's not worth it to do X or Y or Z for a couple of $100,000. And I think that may be some thinking that we want to revise, because every $100,000 is critical to our budget. And we can't afford to have this mentality of, well, that's such a small percentage of our overall budget. But budgets live and die by nickels and dimes that are spent every day. And so those are the kinds of things that conversations we need to have. And so, yes, at some point we will be having conversations about, are we appropriately sized for our student population and our revenue that we receive.
And I think it's important that the community knows that comes from the board. That's not an administrative, you know, we're responsible for the budget and the size of the district, and those are the things that we need to be talking about and making decisions about. And those are hard, as we know. We've done it.
We tried it once.
Yeah.
Discussions on Summit, discussions on lots of.
Well, and along those lines, I think it's important to note the two graphs in conjunction with each other.
Mhm.
That ours mirrors the county almost identically. And so this notion that there are students out in the county that we can pull in, while there may be a handful,
Right.
and you know, we're working towards that. Summit and San Antonio and programmatic changes. I don't think it's a magic bullet based on what we're seeing countywide.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any salvation in, attracting the private school students here. I've been up there now recently to a number of them, and they're not us. Most of them are boarding schools, which is not what we are. They offer, when you're paying tens of thousands of dollars a year for your kid to go there, the resources are so much beyond what we have to offer. I think, if we were a model public school, you're not going to compete against Kate and Thatcher and those schools because they offer an entirely different product. So
You sound like Hank.
Well,
He used to say that, we're not competing. I worry about the elementary level, though. I do feel like, which is why I was so happy when you brought the summer school to our district, because it's really an opportunity for people who aren't in our district, who aren't in our schools, to attend and see what we have to offer.
So I was sharing before the meeting started with the board that we have around 400 and some students who are enrolled in summer school at the elementary level. And of those, about 100 and just right around 150 are not Ojai Unified students currently. So as a recruitment tool, it's a good offering for us. And we did have last summer families who came and said, gosh, I didn't know the schools were like this. This is really great. And it was a good opportunity for them to have some experience with public schools. I don't know how that translated into long-term
Enrollment, I know.
Yeah, that's
I've
hard to
actually
track, but-
tried to recruit a few families away, and they're very happy, and they have friends, their kids have friends, and that's difficult, especially those new families that are coming from LA, where they wouldn't ever even think about going to a public school because of what schools were like where they were. So we have that. That's not particular to us. It's not, if it was a better public school, I would go to it. I think it's just not even a consideration.
We do have our enrollment study that, if you remember, you approved in a prior meeting. That's underway. I've had 2 data meetings with them so far. One of the most pertinent questions that they ask is what kind of housing development is happening in your community? And the answer is there are 50 proposed low-income units on the kind of 3 to 4 year horizon potentially that are not approved yet, but
9 houses going in on Pearl.
yeah, so there's a few, but I think one of the things that we'll begin to see is the districts, if you drive in Ventura and you can see there's significant housing developments going all around Wagon Wheel and Oxnard.
Huge.
Simi Valley,
Santa
Conejo, Fillmore, Santa Paula, is that we may continue to see that families are going where there's affordable housing, which is not something that our community has been able to address in a significant way yet. And so I feel like that is going to continue to be one of the issues in the Ojai Valley that's hard for our schools, is the affordable housing for families who have kids.
And I'm not going to pick on you, Michael, but I want to counter your argument of they offer things that we can't compete, because I think we offer things that they absolutely can't compete with. And we have amazing programs that draw students, frankly, away from private schools and into the public schools. Our drama program and music program and things, dance that private schools around us are not offering. And so there is a competitive element, I think, and we have a robust ability to attract students with our programs.
I will amend my statement. Correct and cure the record. Actually, there's another area that it occurs to me that we excel in that I don't have personal knowledge, but I've read the reports, is the social and emotional learning of our students.
Yes.
And the whole child protection.
Yep.
Some of the scandals that came out of Thatcher recently. And I'm, again, I'm somewhat familiar with what services are offered. And I think that is an area where we do a remarkable job, and it'll stack up to anybody.
Agreed.
Aye.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Passes without objection. All right. So now we're at 3.2, the public hearing and action for the local control and accountability plan. Let me see. I wonder who's going to present that.
I think I did this once before, but
Really? You look familiar.
the good news is the very day on June 1st that we had the public hearing before, I didn't notice it that day because I was busy with something else, but Cesar Morales, who's the BCOA superintendent, sent out a letter to all districts saying that we should add an action referring to the early TK admission. So we've added it as part of goal 2, which is the academic goal. So it'll be a 2.6, and it simply uses the same language the state uses, saying that we will add TKers who turn 4 by September 1st, all inclusive, through, you know, some districts are doing it incrementally, and we decided to do it all at once. So we're saying in that action that we're doing it all at once. And I think it's really important for our youngest learners, especially when we're trying to emphasize early literacy. I think it's a really key step. So that's the only thing new in the LCAP.
Formatting.
I was just going to
I'm gonna
say. this
actually
is
open
easier.
the public hearing again, even though I'm not sure we need to, because we did it
Yeah,
before.
probably, let's
But
do
just
it.
just in case, I'll make a motion to open public hearing again.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is open.
Thank you.
We received any. I'll motion to close the public hearing.
Wait, is there any public? No. Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and I'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, and just in terms of, you know, the questions that came from the DAC.
Yes.
You know, none of them to me seem to, they seem to be answered within, you know, the question, and let's hear, you'll find the answer to that on this page.
Yes.
And there's, you know, there wasn't, in my reading of them, something that, oh, we need to change that, or there's something.
Yeah, I think we had, there were 12 comments or questions that needed a response. I think there were 11 or 12, something like that. And Tiffany and Cheryl and I worked on responses. And I think we didn't get any feedback from those responses, but there were a couple of things that were suggested, like breaking out salaries, for example. Now, I'd have to look at other LCAPs to see if they ever do that, if other districts do that.
Maybe by school site?
Not by school sites, but just what exact salary will go, like say, a multi-tiered system of supports, intervention. So what are those teacher salaries, how much are the classified salaries, like that. Then also there was another comment, remember in the budget overview for parents, this top document, it says something like 27,000 or 27 million are used for other things, salaries, benefits, and we list the things, salaries, benefits,
Operating costs.
special education, operating, utilities, all of that. And there was one comment that from one member of the DAC who would like that to be broken out. That one paragraph, it's on the page with the bar graph, and you'll see the narrative right below it. And I don't know if it's not a common practice. I've looked at other BOPs, budget overview for parents, and I haven't seen it yet, but I haven't looked at all 1,000.
Well, I mean, then you're breaking down everything. That's another look at the budget, which is not really what the LCAP is about.
Yes, I agree.
Although I could see someone wanting to know, what are we spending on materials, personnel, that kind of thing in, you know, summary numbers. But to break it down to every one of these things seems
That's a lot of work.
really
Have a
granular,
lot of
yeah.
other-
One year, I think it was the 17-18 LCAP, in that cycle, that 3-year cycle, we did have to break out the budget and then the actuals into the SACS codes. So we did have to break out, is it in the thousands, is it in the 2000s, and the 3000s, like that. But it was so cumbersome for districts, for the reader, for our educational partners, just it became pages and pages and pages and pages of SACS codes. And most people didn't really care about
And
that.
so they took it out of the template.
Yeah.
So that has been tried. And,
Yeah.
it's
Tried
tried a requirement because it was not as successful.
It just was 1 year only, and it was very cumbersome.
Well, and I have to say that, the first look at this was cumbersome, whatever it was, 6 years ago or whatever. But as you, because so much of it is actually the form. It's not our stuff. It's, you have to kind of really learn how to read it to find what we're addressing and make those ties so that it's become easier for me to digest.
Yeah,
But,
because we have to use, obviously, the template, and the powers that be at CDE, they tweak the template a little bit every year. Hopefully they won't tweak it too much more. So,
And we've been working on our end on increasing the readability. So you can see that from when you saw this on June 1st to now, we added some paragraphs and some bullet points and some numbers, and based on feedback from the TAC and from a member of the public, we have worked on trying to increase readability, and that's something that we can continue to do every time, is to refine and further refine and further refine based on feedback.
Yeah, I don't know what you did besides formatting. I mean, the formatting was obvious, right? And it was just like made the read, but it feels like you're writing this differently because it feels like I understand it now. when I'm reading it, and a lot of it was just like before. So whatever you're doing, please keep
keep
doing it.
doing it.
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
Know what you did besides formatting.
Oops.
Sorry.
Any other questions for me? Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you,
No,
Marilyn.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, this is an action item as well. Are we approving the LCAP?
No,
What about-
tomorrow.
oh.
That was just a public
Yeah.
hearing.
Oh, that was, okay, the action's tomorrow, all right.
The action is open the public hearing.
That was the action, okay, right, so we've closed the public hearing, we're done on this one. So we'll go to 3.3, Citizens Oversight Committee Annual Report. I see.
we see a familiar
I
face.
see somebody I know out there.
You guys get to hear from Alan and I enough, but, so I'll turn it over to Kathy in just a second, but we have another great COC. They're highly efficient Citizens Oversight Committee, I will say. But I think one of the biggest things we've introduced is some of the site visits, and it's been great. So one of our meetings every block is for site visits, and so we just kind of see what we've done and what is coming up. So I will let Kathy.
Well, I would have
wrap up the report.
a few words to present to you as a formality, really, the COC report from the committee. I'm here to represent our chair, Bill Norris, and the other members, and really to give our thanks to Alan and Adam for the thoroughness of the documents they provide to us and answering all of our questions. We've been very satisfied with that. That's really all I have to say.
Well, it was nice that the audit was, 70% of the, right, it was a real thorough audit. So.
Very thorough
Right.
audit.
And 100% Mr. K.
Right.
Right.
Will be different next year.
Absolutely.
So we present that to you for your approval tonight. Thank you.
Kathy, I just want to say thank you for stepping in and doing it, and I hope you'll take our thanks back to the COC to
We
everybody.
have our meeting schedule set for next year, so we will do that.
Say thank you for being our taxpayer representative. That's always difficult, and I know that was some personal cost to you, and we're grateful for your
My
service in that area.
It's an area that is important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just two more quick things. Thank you to Kathy for jumping on the CFC. She obviously did this for a number of years, so kind of keeps us in line as well. We're happy to do it. The other thing I wanted to point out in the annual report that we were able to change right after ours was that we actually received the letter of certification from DSA for all of the old projects. So we had one that was lingering that had somehow it's been tied to the library at Nordhoff. Library got tied off or signed off, and within a day we had the final certification of the other one too. So all 32 projects are certified. So,
Great.
and that's in this report. So that was a big, I know how different number of years. So, you have questions?
Question?
Yeah. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you guys.
I'll move to approve the June 2022 annual bond report.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, that passes unanimously.
Thank you for
Thank you,
your work
guys.
on that.
All right, well, and that completes our open session agenda. It's like, oh, that's not bad. We'll be adjourning to closed session and report out anything that needs reporting out.
And I would like to point out, we probably will have to reconvene on that since we're only 3 of the 5.
Yeah.
I would imagine that we would be able to finish,
I would.
or we just would want the input of the other two.
And
Don't be surprised to see another evaluation on somewhere in the near future.
And on an evaluation item, there isn't a report out anyways, and so.
Oh, right, there wouldn't be
will-
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, there will be a report out from the end of this closed session.
No reporting out. All right, thanks, everybody. We're gonna adjourn to closed session.
Thank you for sending your shirt. Huh? Thank you for